Ms. Burnett?
Here.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Weger?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Mann?
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Okay, thank you. Welcome, council. The first item up will be corrections to the journal of the preceding meeting for October 3rd, 2019. Anyone has any additions, corrections, deletions? Now we'll look for a motion.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Schweitzer to accept the minutes presented to us from the October 3rd meeting. Discussion? Let's do ayes and nays on this. All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. Next item will be public comment. If anyone has information they would like to present this evening, you're welcome to do so at this time. Okay, seeing no one from the public, move on to communications from elected officials, other officials or agencies of the county.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and identify yourself, please.
My name is Martina Hall. Last night and for the past 6 nights, I've chosen to sleep outside as I have done every year for the past 6 years in order to raise community awareness to the homelessness issue in Vigo County. I do so because I believe it's my civic duty. Last night, the temperatures fell with a wind chill in the negative teens, and I slept outside by choice. However, there are those in our community who do not have that choice to make. What they also do not have is the option to have somewhere to go to be safe. Last year during the polar vortex, Reach Services opened their doors as a not-for-profit to allow individuals to come in out of the cold. In response, other religious entities and not-for-profits opened their doors as well. One entity that failed to act and continues to sit in silence is our local government. While the support of our event, specifically from Chris Schweitzer, is welcome and acknowledged and wonderful, we require action. I beseech you on behalf of those 600 individuals sleeping tonight without adequate housing in our community to take action towards opening a warming and cooling center, to put into place policy that in extreme temperature and emergency, sheltering will be provided for those in need. Thank you.
Thank you. And communications from elected officials, other officials, agencies of the county. Councilmember Spence Burnett.
Thank you. I have 3 items tonight. Just first, briefly, I had a chance to visit with Sheila Priester and the staff at group homes a few weeks ago, and I sent an email to the commissioners after that. They do such a wonderful job there, and were very complimentary of the support that they receive from both the commissioners and the council. So I just wanted to pass that along. They are also, I think they've just completed an accreditation visit, which I think they're excited about, and I hope that they have believe they'll have some positive results to bring to the council early next year. 2 administrative items that I wanted to bring just for your review tonight. Since we're at the end of the year, I wanted to provide a more significant update than I have in the past. The first one I'll review is the change to the proposed change to the request, or creation really, of a request of council form. This is a project that I've been working on with Calissa. Jim Bramble has been involved and very helpful, and we've had meetings so far with a couple of representatives from departments, engineering and the sheriff's department specifically. The purpose of this effort is to try to develop a form that's a little bit more clear and, just, if you will, provide some guidance to departments when they're making a request of council. It's intended to be used for all different kinds of requests, budget adjustment, budget, as well as personnel. We'll have to retain, there's a personnel form that would have to be retained as part of the process, but it's really meant to not only help with the consistency and completeness of the review by council of requests that are being made, but also help departments to prepare for the kinds of questions that they might get from us to justify a request. So that's what we've been working on. We've been working during the summer and fall. We looked at a form from another county. We looked at the input forms and some of the memos that come to us now, developed some draft questions. I've talked to you all a little bit about those, and then we've developed a draft form and then met with these couple of departments to go through it. I would still like to meet with a couple of other departments, parks and highway. The highway department have been recommended to me. And then, of course, we'll have to finalize it and finalize the procedural requirement for how departments will bring this to us, and that I would hope that they would be required to bring it to us, but that would be a matter for the council to determine next year. So I'm just offering this to you as an update, and I believe that I'm talking to Calissa. I believe the plan would be to, after we've worked with a couple more departments to finalize the form, I work with Bob Effner and Calissa to develop a proposed rules change that would be brought to the council in January. So I hope you'll see in the actual form, there are two attachments to this summary. One is the form that, and Calissa has done great work on this, that the departments would see to complete. So you see things like revenue source and whether this is a one-time request or a recurring, these are recurring costs. Over to the right, the thing that makes this form different from the other one that you have is the instructions. So we've tried right there next to the fields that the departments will be required to complete, tried to give them instructions as to, or information or description of what it is we're asking them to complete. So you see information on the front about the amount and what accounts are involved, and the funds and so forth. And then on the back sheet, you see the information that hopefully will reflect the kinds of questions that we ask and the kinds of justifications that our departments offer for why the appropriation that they're requesting or the personnel change as it happens they're requesting is important for them to receive. So you see purpose, benefits, what impact will result if this is not approved, did you consider alternatives, is this a mandate, and those kinds of things. And then we try to capture information about that might be important for the annual budget process as well. You know, sometimes we ask, well, you know, did you ask for this in the annual budget process, and what happened in that situation? So I'm hoping that some of this information will be useful as we look for what's happened during the year and then look back as we do the budget to say, oh, well, this group asked for this amount, for example, and their justification was such that we realize we can tell that we really should add it to the budget next year. And let's make sure that that happens so we don't have a department that has to come sort of repeatedly and ask for the same kind of funding that they need to keep their operation going. And then finally, down at the bottom, there's just some administrative fields that will help us keep track of where this appropriation is, what ROC number and that sort of thing. So I would ask you all, and then the third sheet that I've handed you is what we would see. Calissa did a nice job of adding this late in the game. If this is the form they fill out, it's got instructions on it, but you see this is the same information that would come to us. It doesn't have the instructions, so it's in a slightly different format, but it's all the same information that was in the first form. So hopefully this second form, the one that's in portrait style, would be the one that we would see and be looking at as we make decisions in the different committees. Any questions or comments? And I know you've had about 12 seconds to look at this, so I would hope that if you have some time to spend between now and January, we can take a look at it and to make a final decision and vote on whether we would use this in kind of pilot form, because no doubt it will change as we work with it for the year 2020. Any comments? The second or third thing, rather, I guess, is the results and some of the current documents from the group that I've mentioned to you before that's working on a tax abatement scoring form, specifically, I mean, in part for us to use. You know, right now we don't have a specific scoring process. The city council does. So what we were looking at was to create a form and a process that we could use in the county council, also update the city council's form, some of the values in their form, and hopefully come out of this with a process that's, as much as the city council and the county council feel like it's important to do so, create a process and a form that's consistent so that businesses that are talking to us in Vigo County, regardless of where they're coming to, see some consistency in the kind of information that is being asked as we consider a tax abatement request. So that was those were part of the goals. And then I'm sort of hoping from the conversations that we've had about this with city council members and with Steve Witt of the Economic Development Corporation that we demonstrate a set of values, actually two sets of values. One, that we demonstrate our values for companies that we are looking, that may be interested in coming to the county, what's important to us in evaluating an abatement that's requested, but also demonstrating the value that has to do with the fact that we're open for business. We welcome new ventures, and we want to make it easy, and we want this process to make sense to them as we consider their request for an abatement. We've had involvement from the city council and the county council. You see some names here. And then also, as I mentioned, Steve Witt from the EDC. I want to thank council members Mike Morris and Chris Schweitzer, and also Calissa Miller for their help with this since April. We've been working on this since April. We did gather forms from other and scoring kind of process documents from other counties to take a look at them. We looked at the Terre Haute process to see what it looked like. We gathered a few citizen comments, and I had some comments from other local government members, especially from the city council, on what was important to them. The group met a number of times and talked about all those inputs and sort of evaluated what was important, and then used that to create a draft form that we've been sort of practicing with. We tried to take some old abatement requests and kind of run them through as best we could the form to see how companies would rate. Now, we were kind of working with sort of, hate to say this, sort of fake data, because what we're asking for is different from what companies have been giving. So that evaluation process wasn't really complete, but it kind of gave us a feel for how the scoring might work. So what we'd like to do now, and what's in process now, is Steve Witt is actually working with a company in town to get precisely the data that we think we're going to ask for on a new scoring form to see, and this is a company that's been through the abatement process already. So we're going to see, A, how easy it is for them to give us the data, and B, how they rate in this scoring form, so we can see if it matches the results that they've already had. And then we'll have some final meetings with the team to review the results and maybe make some adjustments. And then again, hopefully, that would happen in time for us to bring that to the city council, the county council in January, hopefully with a vote to use it in draft form or pilot form next year, and also to the city council, which might happen in February rather than January. For the city council. I would say, before we take a look at some of the details, this is clearly meant to be advisory. So it's gathering information and running a score that would be input to each of our individual decisions about an abatement request. There are certainly other factors that might be important to us, that would weigh in, but it's basic information about the kind of the financial contribution of the company and that's their operations and that sort of thing. I've also, so that's kind of the summary of what's going on, of the proposal that will come to us all in January. I want to say too, it seemed an opportune moment to kind of bring these things forward now because we're all the same in January and all of us are the same people. So there's some continuity between this year and next year, which is going to be a little different in the city council. So, I've also given you the list. I think I brought this to you before, the list of factors that other counties that we found use in their scoring process. There's a lot of emphasis on, obviously jobs and salaries and benefits and that sort of thing. So hopefully what you see here that's generally present in other processes, you'll see in the form. The final thing that I've given you is, this is not the scoring form, because that gets a little bit complicated. We'll spend some time trying to make it simpler, but this is a review of what a company would be, or enterprise would be asked to provide. So as you go down through here, hopefully you see some of the elements that I've talked about as being present in those other counties and in the City of Terre Haute process. There's information being asked for about total salaries. That really has to do with what kind of income tax might be generated from a company that wants an abatement. So, it really is reflective of, okay, they get an abatement, but we're going to get income taxes potentially out of that. So we're asking about salaries. We're also asking about community service. What kinds of things might you have in your programs to contribute to the community? Again, I hope this is reflective of values. We've got information on here about community service, about internships, about grants. So asking them what they might do and what is part of their corporate culture. I meant just to say specifically, these specific elements came out of a meeting that I attended with the Quality of Place group that operates in Vigo County. I met with them once and they were kind of giving me input on this. Then further down, there's information on the property, of course, the real and personal property investment. I think this one is for personal property investment. And then I want to highlight, there's benefits information in terms of what a business brings to our county. What kind of quality of employment are they providing? What are their benefits programs? That's important to the people of the county. If we're providing a company with an abatement, again, how are the people in this community as employees going to benefit? So benefit programs are an important part of that. The number of jobs being created. We spent a lot of time talking about, in the information we get right now, the information about jobs and salaries is quite often highly summarized. A company will come to us and say, we're bringing 10 jobs and the total salary is $200,000. Well, that could be, just being sort of ridiculous, that could be one job at $150,000 and 9 jobs at a total of $50,000, which is not, those are lower paying jobs. So we want to kind of get the companies to give us more detailed information about the kind of jobs and wages that they're going to be paying. So the bottom part is intended to take a look at that. And then there are a couple of things that might swing us one way or the other. One is adverse conditions, like are you going to create hazardous waste? A favorable condition would be, are you going to create revenue, so to speak, for other businesses in our county? That would be a good thing. So we've got a couple of places for them to say, we're doing these positive things that are outside of the jobs and wages sphere, and but please tell us if you're doing something that might be create a disadvantage in our community. So we've got a place for some of those things. So again, this hopefully would be fairly straightforward for a company to provide information on, because I would hope these are all things that they would know. We'll see how that pans out next year, if indeed we make a decision to pilot this. So again, we've got a little bit of work to do on the committee to maybe finalize some things. we would potentially bring this to the council in January to see if you all would vote to begin using it, and then we would pilot it, hopefully, as companies come through in 2020, and we would use it as an advisory, as an input to our decisions as council, individual council members, on how we would vote on a tax abatement request. Thank you. Questions? Councilman Schweitzer.
I was just saying, good work. That's a lot of work you put in.
Well, and thank you to you and Mike for your help on this. There were many meetings that we had on Monday mornings about this, so. Questions, comments?
I'll throw a couple out so that you can have a discussion at your next meeting. The school teacher in me has the debate that a business owner is required to be honest. We have in our economics textbook a big debate. Does the business community require honesty? Proof in manufacturing, proof in all that. Then the other side of the debate is, well, what do you do for the community? And it sounds like we're getting into a big debate here as to how these scoring elements are going to come into play. So is there a green light, yellow light, red light? Does it take any subjective nature out of the council's hand? Can a business that scores 42 out of 100 just automatically say you need to move to one of the other 91 counties? Is there a human element to this? So I would just say, whenever you do a scoring, if I've got 60% is passing, but mom and dad have 80% is acceptable to their kid, what I may think is good, mom and dad may not. So when you're looking at this in terms of a numbers game, and a company's filling this out, and they're seeing that they're coming through with a 40, but it may be a company that's going to have 175 jobs, and they're going to be promoting positively. And so, I mean, when you get numbers involved, just where are we going with that? Is that to take in the judgment out of the council's hand, for example? So I would just say one of the things to consider here, there's obviously no answer tonight
Right.
With that. But I think it would be something that you would definitely want to look at. The counties that you're providing to us, I assume, are the top 5 job-getting counties. We're wanting to emulate the best job-getting counties, not the middle of the road or the poorest ones. So the ones that you're providing for us to look at, these are the ones that are drawing the talent in. I know we have heard over and over and over again about the quality of young people that graduate from Indiana State, Rose-Hulman, and Ivy Tech, the folks who are from our community that graduate all the way from Evansville to Notre Dame that don't come back to Vigo County. So if there is a way to tell folks we're open for business and we would love to have you stay in our community. So just a lot to consider here with this request. I don't know about having a numbers game where if we're establishing a benchmark of being met or not being met, it seemed like each business is unique in its own right. And now it'd be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what you present.
Okay.
And so I know it's still a work in progress, but just a couple of things to consider.
Sure. Good comments. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Any other members of elected officials, other officials, agencies of the counties? Commissioner Kearns making his way up.
Thank you, Councilman Mann. Brendan Kearns, County Commissioner, District 1. I want to thank Martina for her words earlier. She is probably the champion of the homeless in this community. It's not a new thing for her. She's been doing it for years and has done an incredible job with Operation Vanguard. Councilman Schweitzer, I think you had a goal of raising $400. What'd you hit?
610.
So you raised $610 for Vanguard. And then, Martina, what do you think you'll raise this week? Yeah. $20,000. So that it's really, it's pretty amazing how some people can get together and do that. So we do need to make sure that we can find ways to help fund these programs that we do now and enhance a lot of the funding. She mentioned the warming and cooling plan. I know I'm involved with a lot of you on those updates as we meet Monday at 10 a.m. and that's open to everyone. A quick update on that. We're focusing on the warming component, not the cooling right now. We're probably a week away from getting the contact phone numbers, a food system lined up. We secured another shelter last night that I think, Mr. Morris, do we need to keep that quiet at the moment? What do you think?
I think you had unanimous support.
Okay. We negotiated a deal last night to use the Vigo County Fairgrounds as an alternative or as an additional location for the next time we have a sub-zero episode. But we are moving forward. There are a lot of people sleeping outside tonight. Right now, I think it's 16 degrees. The parameters, we have set parameters within this program. Unfortunately, 16 degrees doesn't hit it. So that's maybe something that we need to adjust because it's extremely cold out there right now. But we are moving forward. We've been quiet about a lot of the stuff, mainly because we're trying to build a lot of support. I think we have 5 facilities now to house people throughout the county. We didn't focus on just a certain part of the county. We focused on all of it, and working out the food challenges, some mental health training for volunteers. Where do we house people that have certain records that would not allow them to be around other people and stuff like that. So it's a very tough exercise. It's much tougher than I thought it was going to be. But I do want to recognize Martina. She's phenomenal in what she's done. And Chris, if you haven't seen how he raised his money, I encourage you to see the photograph of him and the I guess, stunt that you did to raise that money. So, yeah. And I know all of you have been involved in some form. So, do you have any questions for me about that?
Commissioner Kearns, I think 2 things jumped out at me last night and to the other members present at the Fair Association. One, the need for multiple sheltering due to people getting along with each other.
Right.
Separation of certain people. But I think that our people were very pleased with that thought. Yeah. So.
I was able to participate in the Vanguard event last year, and I think Chief then, Sheriff now Plassey, you and I were almost tent mates, right? Yeah, I won't go into too many details about that. We had fun, didn't we? Just kidding. But Sheriff was there, and I think the thing that you and I gained most of that was the 6-hour session we had in the room listening to the homeless, the veterans, and why they're in their situation. There's one guy that I was talking to for that entire 6 hours, and I thought he was one of the volunteers helping out. I didn't realize until about 1 a.m. that he was homeless himself. PhD, former scientist down in the Gulf of Mexico, and life just went sideways. So living in his van. I don't know if he's still homeless or not. I haven't seen him. But, that was quite an eye-opener. But I guess what I'm getting at is during that event, touching on what you just shared, we actually had to remove, 4 people to a church over in West Terre Haute because of adverse interaction. As we've talked about homeless a lot in these meetings, homeless people do travel in groups. And sometimes those groups get split up and things change and they don't work well together. So, yeah, we need to have 4 or 5 locations. And the Lighthouse mission, too, has opened up more space. Reach Services, I think they've done something pretty good that I don't think I'm at liberty to share. But that'll allow housing of a few more. Mental Health America has stepped up. Hamilton Center. What's really neat, since Martina really got this going in the community, I've seen a lot of organizations that were competitors. They're working together now. They have the same common cause, but I think what they're doing is focusing on what they excel at. They're and utilizing those talents and services to make sure that collectively it works. So, I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other communications from elected officials, other officials or agencies of the county? Okay, seeing none. Reports from standing committees? I don't believe there are any. Reports from select committees? I don't believe there are any. Ordinances relating to appropriations will begin with Annual Budget Committee. Councilmember Morris.
Okay, this will be the final action needed on a tax abatement. The final reading, I believe they are represented here this evening. We approved it unanimously at the last meeting, and so this will be the final approval. One, the first being for Midwest Investments, the property group of the B&D automation for real property tax abatement, and then the second one is for the abatement for the personal property abatement. So, and they're represented. Do you have any questions?
Jeff Lind Law Firm. To clarify, do you want to hear them together?
I can.
I believe you did last month.
That's fine. Yeah. It's the same people, right? The Deckers,
Yes.
D&D Automation.
D&D Automation, and the property owner is Midwest Investment LLC, same ownership. Your counsel, Mr. Effner, pointed out that the resolutions we passed last month, the 16, which is a real property tax abatement, the heading on the Exhibit B, which was the math calculation on the tax payment, having run it through the calculator, inadvertently used the word personal property instead of real property. All the other information was accurate. And on 17, the submitted calculation for the personal property tax abatement did not make it as an attachment on your resolution, which passed. So what you have before you tonight has on 16 corrected the title, and on 17 adds the calculation that you had before you, but did not make it as an attachment to the resolution last month. Mr. Effner, is there anything else that you need in that regard? And again, we're here to answer any questions you have. I have Dave Decker, one of the two brothers that are owners of this business.
Questions, comments? To get a clarification on this, are we doing these as amendments or are we doing these as presented?
I think this is final action. This is final action, and we've delivered enough copies to Calissa. Were they distributed? Yes. So what you have in front of you, I'm simply explaining why you see a final action with an exhibit that has the calculations on it. Had it not been for the two things I mentioned before, you wouldn't have had the attachment because it would have been on last month's resolution.
I think you can go ahead and proceed to vote on the final action as presented.
With the two that are in our possession,
Yes,
not the ones in the book.
right. I don't,
Correct.
is there any, that's correct, that's correct.
The forms on 30, 37, 38, 39, and 40 in our book are accurate.
They're not.
They are not. The last, I made the changes after talking to Bob. The last paragraph of each in your book of the actual resolutions before signature made reference to last month's adopted resolutions. They now make reference to the attached calculation exhibits on the resolutions that you have in loose form, not in your book.
Right, but these are marked amended in our book.
What's amended was
That's
the
but the
SP
statements
ones, and those were accepted as amended.
Okay, that's, I just want to make sure.
Because these are
The statement of benefits you have in your book are
That's-
correct.
Okay. So everything that we have before us. So if there aren't any comments or questions, look for action to be taken on, and we'll do the first one, Resolution 2019-16, Real Property Tax Abatement, Midwest Investments LLC.
Would make a motion to approve this.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilmember Morris, seconded by Councilmember Weger, to approve as presented this evening, final reading, 2019-16, Real Property Tax Abatement, Midwest Investments LLC. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer. Aye. Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Weger,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr.
Okay, let the record reflect it passed 6-0. Next item, final reading of abatement for D&D Automation, Inc., Resolution 2019, Personal Property Tax Abatement, D&D Automation Incorporated. Discussion. Okay, we have Resolution 2019-17, Personal Property Tax Abatement, D&D Automation, Inc. Motion made by Councilmember Morris, seconded by Councilmember Weger. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Weger,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Thank you very, very much.
Let the record reflect passed 6-0. Councilmember Morris, is that your component this evening?
President Mann, that concludes annual budget committee's business.
Okay, very good, thank you. Budget adjustment is up next. The first item is resolution of reallocation of existing appropriation 2019-05. Request of council 19-059, general fund for the sheriff. I believe the sheriff is here with us this evening. This passed the budget adjustment committee 3-0 favorably.
Good evening, members of council. John Plasty, Vigo County Sheriff. This request is for $6,000, $4,000 in excess in office supplies, and $2,000 in excess animal control supplies to go towards contractual service to pay for the install of some of the lighting, radio packages of the squad cars we ordered. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Not seeing any questions or comments.
Oh, thank you. Nice outfit.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Weger, seconded by Councilmember Thompson to accept request of Council 19-059, the existing appropriation of 2019-05. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Weger,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. Let the record reflect that the resolution passed council.
Thank you.
Next item is additional appropriation ordinance 2019-36, request of council 19-061 for the jail. Once again, the sheriff is here. This request, is this $766,100?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sheriff?
I know the auditor kind of came up with these figures, but it was to cover the 24 jailers. I don't believe it was added on to the budget for last year once it was added, if I'm correct. Yes, thank you. So I or Calista can answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments?
Well, I believe as we finished up our year last year, we had passed a tax increase, and we're trying to meet the needs of the court for additional jails to meet the mandates that they were putting on us, and so we approved the hiring of the people, but we hadn't approved the money in the budget, correct? And that has varied and has been a uncertain amount because you didn't know how many jailers we were going to wind up with.
Correct.
They didn't just appear magically one day. And so this is a figure that's come up to adjust our budget for 2019 and make accommodation for payroll of those people.
Good, thank you, Mr. Morris. This does come out of County General, and it did pass the committee 3-0 favorably. Anyone else? Entertain a motion if there are any additional comments or questions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, additional appropriation ordinance 2019-36. Motion made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Wager. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. Let the record reflect, additional appropriation ordinance 2019-36 passed favorably, or passed tonight. Next up, additional appropriation ordinance 2019-37, request to council 19-062 from the sheriff. This one is out of County General, $10,765.
And this transfer is required to cover two retirees that we had this year, Sheriff Ewing and Detective Tim Osborne, for their final pay for time that they had accrued.
This did pass committee 3-0 favorably. Questions, comments?
I got a comment.
Mr.
How many
Morris?
retirees do we have this year from the Sheriff's Department?
Just the two.
Just two?
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilmember Wager, seconded by Councilmember Schweitzer for additional appropriation ordinance 2019-37. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. Let the record reflect it passed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is additional appropriation ordinance 2019-38, request to council 19-063 from IT in the dollar amount of $10,765. We have a couple of representatives here to speak on this request.
Councilman Mann and members of the council, Cheryl Loudermilk, County Auditor's Office. We came up with this request due to the overtime that had to be paid out, as you know, due to the ransomware attack. That overtime was okayed by the commissioners, so at this point, they will be a little short if we don't do an additional appropriation for what was paid out.
And this will be put into our insurance, trying to recoup this money from the insurance too, for overtime. Once we get everything in, all the final things that are still coming up, and trying to get all the final bills. We've talked to the insurance company, and we're in dealings with them right now. So hopefully it'll all be reimbursed back to the general fund.
Okay, very good. I'm going to make sure I'm giving the right dollar amount. $13,407. Is that correct amount? $13,407. Questions or comments? Seeing none, entertain a motion. This passed the committee 3-0 favor.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Spence Burnett, seconded by Councilmember Thompson for additional appropriation ordinance 2019-38. Discussions? Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Record
guys. We
reflect.
Appreciate it.
Passes. Thank you. Next item is additional appropriation, ordinance 2019-39, request of council 19-064, health. This is for the health fund, $34,415. We have representatives to speak on this.
Councilman Mann, members of the council, Cheryl Laudermilk, County Auditor's Office, and reviewing what you are going to need to finish up through the end of the year. The health department will be a little short in group insurance due to changes that were made during open enrollment. And it comes to about $34,415 to the dollar. It's like $414.
Questions or comments? This passed committee 3-0 favorably. If none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Weger, seconded by Councilmember Thompson, to approve additional appropriation ordinance 2019-39. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. Let the record reflect this passes. Thank you very much. The next item
Thank you.
could get a little complicated. We have additional appropriation ordinance 2019-40, request of council 19-066. It's a Lowit special distribution. If I'm reading the amount correctly, it's $627,902. There are some options for this choice this evening. We have 3 people for this one.
I'm trying to outnumber you, but I don't know if it's going to work. Members of the council, Larry Robbins, Vigo County Engineer. In communications for the next 2 additional appropriations between the Commissioner's Office, Auditors, Highway, and my office, we thought it'd be better use of the Lloyd distribution to cover the shortfalls in the Community Crossing Matching Grants funds from 2016 and 2017. And keep the money, the additional request from edit within the edit budget to go towards future economic development projects. So we'd like to withdraw the edit request for the additional appropriation.
Which is actually the next item on the agenda. So we'll pause on that for a moment. We'll focus on this one that's before us now. The $627,902, the request is being, and make sure I'm giving the number correct, we are looking at using this with line item 44008. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be paving.
The paving line item is. Well,
The money that was not initially allocated. Is that correct or incorrect? This was not.
had not been appropriated. However, we had grants to be taken from here and not have an appropriation from edit.
So as Mr. Robbins presented, if this passes tonight, the item that's request of council 19-067 disappears.
Is that the one for edit?
Is that correct? That one's
Yes.
going to disappear.
Yes.
So what you're
Withdrawn.
essentially going to do with this money is what the request was for that request.
From the edit.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough, because I just want to make sure how we're getting to this tonight
Correct.
for the debate. Well, the option could be, the council could just say, we're going to keep the money where it currently is. That is just, it's not appropriated at this time, it just remains. You're requesting that we not do that. You're requesting that the money does get put into this fund and then used for community crossings.
Yes. And we felt that keeping more in the edit budget, having that money, a little more money in the edit, so it's better for the community and for us in the future.
This is money that has not been touched for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
The edit money is one that is used for different items. And so this is a fund that is currently available that would leave edit in the state that it's in at the moment.
That's correct.
Questions or comments?
I just wonder if there's anybody who's not confused, because we want to be sure we get everybody.
Well, I'm hoping to be clear here with this. So, Ms. Councilmember Weger, do you have a question?
I don't.
Councilmember Spence Burnett.
So I think I just heard you all say that there is no allocation from edit anymore as part of this. It'll be withdrawn, okay. And then there was in the original first request, I guess it was 40, there was about $255,000 that was being requested in that original request that was needing sort of, in my opinion, it kind of needed a plan. That's not in this request. That's being used for the community crossings.
Correct.
Okay,
So it would just handle the whole shortfall of community crossings at this point,
okay,
the lowest special distribution.
okay. And the 372 that was a previous payment is now coming from highway, directly from a highway account. Okay, thank you.
I think that's what you had discussed or had concerns with.
A couple of those items I did.
Yeah.
I have no idea how you all came up doing this, but thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
We have also implemented some internal controls through all departments, try to make sure that we don't have this same problem in the future.
Thank you. It's a human business. Mistakes are going to happen. It's just part of it. So I think that, it's all learning and you just move forward. So I applaud that. And I've got to be honest, we had our meeting and you folks were honest with us. That's very refreshing. The people just come to, and look, this is what happened. There's no hiding of it. This is the quality of folks that we're dealing with in county government. It was like, this happened. We need to move forward. And I respect that very much so.
Thank you.
And anyone else, questions or comments? Do we need to make an amendment, or can we just move it as presented?
There really is an amendment. There's really an account. But we can make all claim adjustments to be paid out of the will tax paving line, or out of the tax paving line item.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be the community crossings.
Thank you. If there aren't any other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance 2019-40.
Second. Sorry,
Okay,
go
we
ahead.
have a motion to approve ordinance 2019-40 by Councilmember Morris, seconded by Councilmember Spence Burnett. This is going to go into the appropriate line item to be used for the community crossing grant shortfall. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Weger,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. The record
Thank you.
reflect this passed, so thank you.
We gotta withdraw this second.
Okay, Roman numeral 7 on our sheet, additional appropriation ordinance 2019-41, request to council 19-067, edit engineer
We would like to withdraw this request.
is being withdrawn. Do we need to vote on a withdrawal? No. Stroke of a pen, it's gone. All right. Thank you. Additional appropriation ordinance 2019-42, request to council 19-068. This is from LEPC/EMA, and it is a request for $5,000.
That's correct. Keith Holbert, Vigo County LEPC Chairman. For whatever reason, the budget for 2019 didn't make it in time for the budget committee, so we've been incurring expenses on a zero budget, as a matter of fact. So we need the $5,000 just to finish out the year, just for contractual services, equipment, and I can't remember what the other line item was that we appropriated as money for the meetings that we used to pay for meetings. So just an additional $5,000 just to pay for what has been expended and to complete the rest of the year with.
So this is for 2019.
Yes, sir.
Questions or concerns, comments?
I have another question of the EMA. Keith, could you answer a question on EMA?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any cots anywhere?
Cots? Not, EMA does not have any cots.
Thank you.
Any others? Not all, council
I
members.
just want to, in our documentation, I want to point out that I think the miscommunication was a result, in part at least, of a staffing change that took place.
We think that's probably what happened there. I know that that we didn't get the budget to the auditor's office. It was after the deadline, and so it didn't make the budget committee agenda. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Entertain a motion. It's the council's choice.
So, go ahead. I'll second.
Okay, Councilmember Weger made a motion to approve additional appropriation ordinance 2019-42, seconded by Councilmember Spence Burnett. I can say this was passed out of committee favorably as amended. So what you're seeing is the amended amount of $5,000. Discussion? Auditor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Burnett,
Aye.
Mr. Schweitzer,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Mann.
Aye. Let the record show this passes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, that takes care of budget adjustment. Personnel Committee. Councilmember Weger.
What we have is, we have a salary ordinance 2019-12, and I believe Jen Jenkins is here from Juvenile Corrections to explain a request that did pass favorably out of our committee for an increase in salary for the office manager.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. James R. Jenkins, the Director of the Vigo County Juvenile Justice Center. Just a bit of a history here. In my tenure as the Director, I have not come to this council for extraneous requests. We received our budget and then we work within that budget for the year. So I don't take this request lightly, or this consideration lightly, and I just want you to realize that. I only come here because I feel it's necessary, and it's necessary to be considered now. The Juvenile Detention Center is subject to an annual audit by the Department of Corrections. That audit has, for 10 years, consisted of 301 standards that must be met by each detention center. For the last 7 years, those audit standards have been in a state of flux because the Department of Corrections and others wish to improve them. And one of the improvements was to reduce the number of standards. And at this point, they've been reduced to 288 standards. But, and the but is the consideration here, there are numerous iterations of those 288 standards which hold us to over 2,000 requirements. That, in and of itself, has been a great deal of work because those 288 new standards and their iterations have required policy and procedural changes so that we can adhere to those new standards. I remind you that none of these standards have been passed by the state legislature, and they do bear fiscal impact to this body. But for 7 years, the Department of Corrections has been wrangling over these and changing them on a yearly basis and the requirements. And the last word I received was this month, and it was that it now looks like it will be one more year until they are voted on. In other words, they will not be voted on this next legislative session. They'll be voted on a year from now. And so we have another year's worth of standards and iterations and changes and adjustments to look forward to. I met with the committee and explained the need here, and I explained a solution, which I believe is simple and easily taken. I explained our justification for that solution, and I took it one step further. I explained the funding that we could utilize to see that this occurs. We met for about an hour, and after discussion and listening to all sides, the committee left with the understanding, or with my understanding, that it was unanimous that this would be recommended to the full council. The information was sent to Wagoner, Irwin, and Shield and Associates, who are the consultants, contractors for the county in regards to the reclassification system that we're operating under. And this letter, especially the last line, the recommendation, is a scintillating example of the point you just made, Mr. Mann, not more than an hour ago. The recommendation from Wagner, et cetera, is the change to the job description adds clarity to the function of the position. While the position increased in factor points, it did not justify a change in classification. So, putting good enough points, according to them. We've got plenty of points, and this needs to be done. We take a position that is now an office manager, period. Not anything grand in the scheme of things. And we are trying to change that classification to not only office manager, but compliance manager, a position that is recommended and suggested by the audit committee themselves and the audit manager. And it's a position, compliance manager. It's held by 6 other juvenile centers across the state. It would require putting this person on this position as a salaried position so that, quite honestly, we don't pay overtime when this position requires it. It increases the position approximately $4,000 to come to that. And the money necessary to increase that position to $4,000 would be taken from the fact that the juvenile detention center, in the past 5-6 years, we have averaged over $40,000 a year in funding from out-of-county inmates. We're holding detainees for other counties, and this year right now we've billed $38,000, and it looks like we're going to be at $50,000 before the year's end. So the money's there. I've never come back to you to use that money any other way. It goes into care of inmates. Mr. Ramble, is that correct? and is utilized by the county in other fashions. So we could use less than 10, or we could use 10% of the money that the center has generated by adhering to the standards, I might add, by bringing in and holding other detainees from out of county, and would be good to go. I understand I'm asking you to reclassify position, and you might ask, well, what if everybody else comes to us and wants to reclassify? They may, and they may come anyway. Maybe some have already come to you. I don't know. I don't know all of the things that you've considered. But I would simply tell them, as I would tell anybody else, come to us with a needed change, with a solution for us, with a justification for us, and better yet, if you can come with funding like they did, then we'd be happy to consider it. And because there's no state statute in your consideration of reclassification, as I understand it. There's no county statute requiring you to hold everybody right where they're at, right where they're classified. And with all due respect to Wagner, et cetera, they're just trying to keep you from spending. They're doing their best to keep the classification, I would suggest, from becoming out of control. In this particular instance, it's a needed change in classification. We have a solution for it. We've justified it to the committee, to their satisfaction, and we certainly have the funding for it. And I would just ask that you look upon this favorably and pass it, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Mann, let me say this as the chairman of the Personnel Committee, we've encountered this situation, in this past year, and it's like Pino Bologna. If you guys remember Pino Bologna, the chef of Pino's,
Yeah.
he used to say, "It's a catch-23." It's a catch-22. We got the money, we got and you need to reconfigure this. So we're up against the wall. The sheriff was here a few weeks ago. He wants to reconfigure his department. He's got the money. We can't do it. I mean, we've taken away the ability of the person who runs the department to run the department by these rules that.
Well, I don't want, the last thing I'm going to do is argue with you, but who says you can't do it? I sat there on that body. You're the Vigo County Council. You're the financial body of the county.
Yep.
If you want to do this, you can do this. There is no state statute. There's no county ordinance against this. This is simply an agreement between the commissioners and the council and other department heads and elected officials that will abide by this reclassification system. But there's nothing that says you can't reclassify as you feel necessary. It's not a, you don't have to go ask permission from anybody. You're the council.
The commissioners, do we have an agreement that we don't even have to abide by it, as far as I know, do we? We have what?
And you can change the salary ordinance. They're the fiscal body. They can change the salary ordinance.
So we could amend.
I don't mean this, I'm not challenging. I'm just saying, again, I sat on this body and I just hate to see you allow your authority to be drained away by the thought that there might be else. There's nobody else. You're it. And that's why I appeal to you.
In my experience, albeit in different environments, reclassification is typically warranted when a job has changed significantly. So I see items here, I think I'm looking at the appropriate information. I don't need to assume, is the serves as compliance manager duty the one duty that's been added to this position?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And it's like saying, you're working on the line now you get to be the plant manager, but we're not going to give you any money. Just keep working the same salary.
Okay, so I see that this person already supervises staff, provides.
No, that's the addition to as they've written it. That's the recommendation.
Okay, so that I'm going to have to clarify because I just asked if
Yes.
the compliance manager is the only added or changed duty. And I thought you said yes.
Yes.
So
that's
now
correct.
I'm looking at other duties that I presume were previously a part of this job, which include supervising and directing staff. Is that accurate? That's what appears on this job description. On this
If
position.
there were any staff to supervise, there's no staff to supervise.
I'm just talking about the the position description as defined, which would have directed what the classification has been
Yes,
for this job. So
right.
the job was classified with the understanding that this position would supervise and direct staff, or could if there were staff there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Establish
Sure.
goals, maintain discipline, recommend corrective action. There are a number of financial responsibilities that have been included in this position in the past, reviewing claims and acting as what I would take as the liaison to insurance companies and hospitals. There's budget kinds of things. I guess I'm looking at this and looking at those types of duties which are fairly high level and would seem to be the kinds of duties that would operate with a fair amount of independence and judgment, and also interact not only internally but externally with significant entities that have a significant relationship with your department. My question is, finally, to get to my question, how are the duties of the compliance manager so different from those high-level activities that I've already described that it would warrant a reclassification? And I want to make one more comment. Adding work, it may require overtime, may cause a person to work more hours, but adding work doesn't justify a reclassification. Adding a different level or type of responsibility may warrant a reclassification in my mind. So I'm not sure how the compliance manager duties differ wholly from some of the others that are described in this position description.
Okay, because the compliance manager is the one responsible for completing the DOC audit. And if this position is not responsible for being the compliance manager, then they're not responsible for the completion of the DOC audit. Right now, it's an office manager who's been assigned extra duty, in effect. And so what this does is legitimizes the position. It gives that position not only the responsibilities involved with being a compliance manager, but it also gives that position the authority to do that.
Which this position already has a significant amount of management authority and has had that as described here in this position.
To some extent, yes, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, now the state has doubled, you do 4 audits now instead of 2 audits, is that correct?
Yes, the audit used to be, just mechanically, the audit used to be performed in 2 days. Then it was down to 1 day. When auditors came to the center, they perused all of the records, they looked at the physical plant, etc., conducted a true audit of the center. The new standards, the ones that we're supposed to be simplifying, have become so complex that we now meet at least 3 times a year. This year, we have met, they have audited us in the spring for a certain set of standards. They came to us in the middle of the summer for a next set of standards, and they just completed the final set of standards in October. Each, and I can't, unless we go through everything we went through in the committee, I can't impress upon you that the preparation, the paperwork, the minutia that must take place to pass this audit and to be prepared for the auditor's visit.
If I can make sure we're doing apples and apples here. And I'm going to set aside the additional pay. Right now, it's classified as a COMOT C. Is this request taking us to a different level of COMOT? Or is this changing the title of the position altogether? And do we have this position already in existence?
We had an office manager position for the Juvenile Corrections Center. And there was a request submitted and revised job description submitted with some changes. That was sent to, after it went to the committee, it was sent to Wagner, Irwin, and Sheehan. And they provided the recommendation that it remain as office manager and as a comment C.
Okay, I'm sorry, don't.
So what we're hearing tonight, are we moving it to a different classification, or are we saying this one is COMOT C plus money? Because I'm wanting to make sure when we get this ordinance before us here that we're looking at, that is this an additional pay for this one position, or is this moving a position to a higher?
It's revising the job description.
That's all we have to do is revise the job description in order to raise the pay.
Okay, but what are we raising what is the request raising? Is it a COMOT D? Is it?
He asked for a flat dollar amount, but for the recommend, I had a discussion with council president once we got the recommendation in, and he had, it lists the ordinances and the documents according to the recommendation, since that had been the practice of the council in the past.
Please say that one more time.
When we received the recommendation from Wagner and Sheehan, I had a conversation with the council president about how to proceed. And he advised me to go with the advertisement. Well, there would not be any advertisement. The ordinances would be in basically reflecting the recommendation, since that had been past practice.
To deny it, in other words.
No, to put it forth as it was recommended.
I'm trying to understand.
I know,
this.
and maybe I can help you. I'm thought, once again, thinking too much. I thought I'd try to do something simple here and make this as it is. This is what this position is doing and will do with the appropriate responsibility and authority. I could have just as easily come over here and just asked for a brand new position and then said, oh, let's just hire somebody else. We don't want to do that. I don't want to pad the department. We haven't asked for any new positions since I've been here for 10 years. We keep doing the same job and everybody's doing a good job. We can do it this way. So I thought I'd try to do it simply by telling you what this position is, and then I thought simply making this position what it is. And the Wagner, et cetera, agree up to the point, well, we don't make it too good.
But you came up with, I'll get to the dollars now. You came up with the 4,000 as part of the request.
Yes.
So we are voting on keeping this one position at the level of Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy, plus an additional 4,000 for this one position only. Is that correct? We're moving all positions to that?
What was that, Jimmy? I didn't change it.
The way this thing is written.
From WIS, yeah.
Changing the job description and making the same pay.
And that's that.
Which is not what you are
No,
asking for.
And my point in giving you a dollar amount, a figure here, is so that if this position were put at exempt, non-exempt, salaried position, bear with me, I don't know this code as well as whoever wrote it up. So if this position is kept at a salaried position, we don't end up paying overtime to this position. And, okay, it's just this. Okay.
I'm getting that.
All right.
I'm trying to figure out here, in our vocabulary, what it is that we are, there's no question that you're up here and you're identifying a need in your department.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm getting that.
Okay.
Does the sheriff's department have this position?
No.
Okay, so there's no compliance officer within the sheriff. This is unique to
Yes.
juvenile.
Yes, because of our subjectivity to the state audit.
Okay. So this is unique to you, but the dollar amount you're requesting is from you. We're not being asked to make a change to go from one level to another level. You're not asking us to go from a C to a D or anything like that. You're asking us to make the change of the what you've written plus the 4,000. That's your request.
Yes.
What's reflected in here, Mr. Bramble? The money's not on here.
Thank you.
What was posted is not on here. I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
What's before us, that is not present. Is that correct?
What Kim has asked for, not before.
Okay.
So who didn't put the money on there? I told everybody and their brother that I wanted this at $4,000.
It was me.
Pardon me?
It was me.
Okay, so why didn't you put it on there?
Because the recommendation came back to leave the classification the same. And when I talked to the council president, he told me to.
Nobody told me anything about it.
So,
It's just one vote.
So,
But that's policy that they had always followed. That's what he went.
okay.
Mr. Commissioner, let me ask you a question. Remember when we had a couple of incidents where we stepped outside the, between the rails, and we raised the salary for health department, and we raised the salary for county engineer in recent times.
Yeah, I recall the county engineer was done while I was on the council, so that probably would have been 2017. But at the end of 2018, if I recall correctly, it was our last meeting where we increased the salaries for the health department. And I know at the time I received some concerned criticism afterwards that we're opening up a can of worms. And that actually gave me great pleasure to hear that, because I'm a firm believer that this system is broken. The consultants are hired to advise. It seems as if we're not taking their information as advice, that it's more gospel. And to me, that concerns me. Council members can do whatever you want. Commissioners can do whatever we want. But when it comes to money, it's up to you to approve that. I'm very transparent. I will share that the three of us, the three commissioners, have been talking about how we can sever this relationship with the consultants. The reason why it hasn't been done yet is because we don't have an effective system to replace it. And I know we're going into a different direction here, but this is what we're going to be running into. Jim's been trying to get this position for how long?
Couple months at least.
And we need to keep the salaries where they need to be to attract and retain talent. I'm extremely concerned that he is here tonight under the auspices that that money's being asked for, and we heard that Calissa didn't move it forward. To me, every time a department head asked for something, you should know what that ask is. So that's something that I'm kind of concerned about. As President Mann noted, that we're all human, we have human errors. I think this is an exercise of how we're going to be able to work together to ensure we're doing what's right. So with that said, we want to get rid of the current program, but we need to find an effective replacement. And we want to ensure that all employees are being compensated to their talents and market value too. We have government to run.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's good philosophy. We cannot increase a request. We can only decrease a request. Correct? This amount here is a C to a C. So my understanding of what we do is we cannot raise this amount.
This salary. Salary is a two-step process. You have to approve the salary, pay to that person's salary. Second, you have to approve funds. I think probably change the salary ordinance. Funding has
And if this does not pass tonight, it cannot come back before us for a year. Is that correct?
But isn't
I'm sorry.
Jim?
If we just vote it down.
If it gets voted down, but I just want to make sure that we're understanding that we're voting on what is.
But if I,
last year hired on salary this table. So I would believe it is possible to approve.
There are no additional meetings. This is the last scheduled meeting of the year.
I heard you say there's a two-step process, so we would be approving merely the salary ordinance, which comes with the classification, which has not changed, by the way, but then there would be a request for the additional $4,000 that is the second step of this?
It's the same thing, just repeated second step of that process. For the addition daily.
No, but for this one, step 2 is still to come, is it not?
If you would pass a salary ordinance for additional amount.
But there's no, then I'm back to your question, there's no amount on this salary ordinance.
But it does, you can amend it. You don't have to advertise the salary. You'll have to advertise the appropriation.
Okay, Calissa and then Cheryl.
If it is the desire of the council to change the pay or increase the pay, you're throwing around the number 4,000. But for the remainder of this year, it's closer to 800, maybe $700-800 for the remainder of the year. And I am certain that probably with the $30,000 that was appropriated last month for his budget, you would have sufficient. Now, when you talk about the dollar amount is associated with that Comet C. There's a number that's related to that for 2019 and 2020. So if you want to step outside the box and you want to change that to a different classification, it would go to that pay that's associated with that classification.
So the next classification would be Comont D.
Could be a path, but, I mean, if you're going to go outside of the box, you can make it whatever you want.
Lisa, let me make sure, because I said
Sure.
Cheryl, are you good?
I was
Okay.
just going to tell you that he had plenty of funding to handle the rest of the year.
So,
Lisa.
so there is a person doing this job right now. This is
Yes.
not, we're getting ready to hire.
Yes.
So have you all made any comparison of people in other counties who have the compliance manager responsibilities and what their pay is? Have you done a market study to?
No, I've not done Mark's, I don't mean to laugh, we ask other counties to send us their version of compliance monitor, and I have a couple of those who responded, but nobody, generally speaking, it's all over the board. But they have somebody who is designated as the compliance monitor, but they have someone designated so that they have, again, authority, and they have a responsibility, and they have authority. But I can't stand here and give you, Madison County does 25 or 40 to 42,000. No.
So we don't know.
But it's certainly worth it. I was going on a simple layman's view here that this position is worth more than an office manager's position. It has in this formation, there's more responsibility, there's more authority tied to this position. And so it should be more than an office manager should be. And I thought if you made it a salaried position, then we'd have a position here where we would not have to punch a clock, count pennies. I just thought it would be a simple solution to something.
So this is not a Comont C request.
I don't know what a Comont C is.
Well, I'm looking at what
He wrote me the letters.
Okay.
It's a Comont C. No
So
one
you're
ever
making a
explained to me.
request for it to be a salaried position, equivalent to whom? Who do we have that's a salaried position?
We're just sort of comparing apples and oranges. He just wants to move to salary.
And in this light, if you wanted to remain a Comont C, whatever that is, and increase the position by $4,000, we're good to go. We'll argue nomenclature later, and I'll come back to you, and we'll get her to compliance manager or whatever you want to get it to, according to the classification system. That's if we keep it. And we have the funding. It's not coming out of anything extraordinary. We were given extra funding because we didn't get enough funding to complete the salary line for the year, as I said the last 3 years in a row.
But our salary ordinances are arranged by an hourly amount.
Apparently what's it's making now.
We have a lot of conversations going on here. We may need the full attention of. The request would also have to be inclusive, I would assume, of Social Security and retirement. So it's not just a dollar amount for pay. There would have to be FICA included.
And I take it the $4,000 would include that.
So what? To add $4,000 to that salary.
It's an hourly amount.
What rate? Would
What?
you have to insert in here?
Into here for an hourly rate, at $4,000 for the whole salary.
Yeah, what grade would that be?
We, Councilmember Morris, did you have something to include?
I'm just wondering if anybody's got an idea what Comont C or Pat or whatever it might be within our scale might be at the same pay raise that the
That's what,
director is
that's
asking.
what I'm having Cheryl check on what, she's a Comont C now,
Right,
and what grade would be 4,000 more a year?
exactly.
We'll have to figure that out in a minute.
It would seem to me that if that's be our pleasure, that we could reclassify it. We're not taking a recommendation, we reclassify it, which takes care of it, which also gives us, I mean, I would think we would have that discretion. And then the allocation for the money, if there's a shortfall, we can make it up however.
Similar to what you did,
And we don't change our salary ordinance, right?
right? You reclassify in this position.
And I like, if I may interject, I like your thinking because we do have the extra salary funds available,
If that's what we want to do.
which, by the way, if not expended, return as always to the general fund.
In the meantime, what is there, 19 juvenile centers across the state?
Yes. We're very fortunate to have this.
Yeah, how many counties do you think we service?
How many counties?
Yes. Additional counties.
Right now, we've taken detainees from 3, Green, Clay, and Fountain. Fountain may go offline here in another year and a half. They're building a new jail, and I believe they're including a juvenile center.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, we have not, at this point, because of the limited space, we could be a regional center very easily, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you we can make money on this deal, but it would come close to paying for itself.
You can't.
It's
We've gone
currently
through all these things.
$19.27 an hour, which is $35,072 on the year. At 4,000 is $39,072. We make it $21.47 an hour, which puts it a little more than a Comont B, but not quite a Pat B. A little more than a Pat A, but
What's a Comont D per hour?
So what would a Comont D,
$20.55.
how much of an annual raise would that be?
You can't have a juvenile center at a jail, right?
No, but you could build it so that the administrative offices and the kitchen and everything are right down the middle. The juvenile center is on the other side, so that you would disallow sight and sound. Sight and sound separation is the key, and confidentiality, of course. So confidentiality is the overriding concern. But no, I wouldn't do that to you.
You could have some administrative and food and disbursement and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be troublesome, as it is now, to provide food, because we're going to be providing food. Sheriff's going to have to haul food from down there up here now instead of right over here. And that's been a real tough, because we do have a minimum amount of staff. We simply don't have enough people to jump in the van, go over and get breakfast, go over and get lunch, and go over and get, we can't leave the place unguarded. So the sheriff has been, jail personnel have been transporting food. And it speaks to, food temperature, especially food temperature and other things, but, got to feed them. Got to feed them, sure.
You've got some options here. I could see somebody making a request, if what Mr. Bramble is saying, and I don't have any reason to doubt you, that we can increase the amount that's been put on here, I guess because it could be less than the 4,000, but what I'm seeing on the ordinance, it's not there. You could make a request to go from a COMOT C to a classification that exists. That would at least keep,
We're looking at, like, going from a COMOT C to a D would be like a $2,400 a year raise.
Would that be sufficient for you, Mr. Jenkins?
To go-
A COMOT D would be
$2,400. Yeah.
To go from C to D,
would be a $2,400 raise, increase in pay.
Approximately $1,927.
No, $4,020.
and is COMOT D, is that exempt or non-exempt? Salaried, non-salaried?
It's an
They're
hourly
all
rate.
hourly.
Okay. Yes, that would be. I would appreciate that effort greatly.
I'm going to guess this was not put in next year's budget.
No,
So-
the request didn't come in until after.
It is going to have to be something that gets dealt with again next year. So
Can I,
when we're looking at this, if the request is made from a COMOT C to a COMOT D, we're using our own lanes. We are not creating a new lane.
No.
So there is some merit in that. If you go, speaking about the council's responsibility for the taxpayer, we need to be looking at what is best in the overall scheme of things for the county, and then what is best for each individual department. And so when we're hearing this request here this evening, there's obviously a need in Mr. Jenkins' eyes, or he wouldn't have been here, to present this. What we have to look at is what is being asked of us in relation now to the entire county. And so if you use our existing lanes, and it's already been mentioned here this evening that did happen last year on at least one occasion, the movement was from an existing lane to an existing lane. There wasn't something that was created that was new in that request. So there is some, what word am I looking for? Not tradition, past practice of that if the council is believing that a position is not appropriately identified. Mr. Jenkins is here, he's presenting, Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy is presenting their information. It's going to be a call that we're going to have to make. So if we have the dollar amounts identified already, and the council believes that it is a COMOT D level position, then we can entertain a motion and have a vote on that. What is before us, as Mr. Bramble has noted, is COMOT C to COMOT C. So that is not going to, yeah, that's not why we've been here this evening to address this.
that's correct.
So what we're being asked to do here is to deviate from the recommendation. If there's a belief that this is merited, then we vote on it and we move on. If it's not merited, then it can come back before us at some time and act at that point. So we have established that COMOT D pays higher than COMOT C. That's within our own structure, correct? We've established that they're all hourly wages that they're computed by, correct?
Correct.
So an individual needing overtime would still earn, or would, the request for overtime wouldn't change
It
whether,
isn't the determination of whether a person is eligible for overtime is not solely that they're paid a salary. There's a whole, realm of labor law that determines that. So my guess is it's probably still,
Any such thing. Simply right now, we don't do overtime. It's just, we don't do that because that's what the county, it's best for the county. It's best for the salary line. My position I'm simply here. It needs more than what it has. It needs authority, it needs responsibility. It needs responsibility first, it needs the authority to carry out that responsibility. And by doing this, I believe that does it. And this is, again, I'm not asking for an extra relief officer, I'm not asking for an extra detention officer. I'm not asking for I'm asking for someone who's going to see to it that we remain open to a great degree, to a great extent. They're going to conduct an audit, which we must fully comply with, which we have every year, and we will continue to do that. But this person has a great responsibility on them, and I just think it should be treated as such.
Any other comments, questions?
I think if Mr. Jenkins is happy with the $2,400 pay increase, probably the simplest thing we can do is just reclassify the position to COMOD D.
I would make a motion that we not follow the recommendation of Wagner, Irwin, Shealy, and that we reclassify this position as described as a COMOD D.
Is that correct wording, Mr. Effner?
As a D?
As a COMOD D.
Yes.
With the revised job description.
As this description is written here. We just
Second.
did not follow the recommendation of Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. We are amending the request. We are not amending the request.
I believe you're amending the request.
Amending the ordinance.
Amending salary ordinance 2019-12.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I didn't amend any salary ordinance.
No.
All I did was change the classification.
Through the salary ordinance.
On page 22, it's salary ordinance 2019-12. If you're wanting that as a comment fee, you'll need to amend that to revise it as a comment D instead of a C.
Okay, I see. So that is listed here.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second, but I want to make sure I'm getting this motion correct, Mr. Morris.
Exactly. So it would be amendment to the salary ordinance.
We need to take away the second.
Yes.
I withdraw the second.
All right,
Okay,
I will withdraw my motion. So speaking then on salary ordinance 2019-12, I would make a motion to amend that to COMOD D from COMOD C.
I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend salary ordinance 2019-12 to reflect a COMOD D classification, not a COMOD C, by Councilmember Morris, seconded by Councilmember Weger. Okay, so we're good on that. Discussion. And I'll ask my first question. To be a COMOD D has certain expectations of responsibilities. Am I correct in that? To be labeled as a D, there are certain job performances. Are we able to believe that this person is going to function in those additional responsibilities?
You got to tell me what they are. I don't know if I can do them. I don't know what a COMOD, and I don't mean to be flip, but I don't know what a COMOD D means.
There isn't any.
What is it?
It's an arbitrary
Mr. Mann,
classification.
I'm just wanting to make sure, because we are doing this today.
It seems like if they were, okay, I'm just going on what little we can tell from the WIS response. Apparently, they didn't see that in the position description as defined. If we're driving blind. They didn't see it, so we can't see it because we can't see what they were looking at sitting here.
No one from Wagoner Share called and asked me what this means. Not one. They didn't ask me the true extent of this position and what it means. And so they assigned some points according to their own letter to this and said, well, it doesn't meet the points to go up to COMOT D. They don't even know what the audit is. It was never explained to them. They didn't check with the state of Indiana. They didn't call us.
Did you call them and ask to talk?
I didn't know they were
this?
even considering this. I met with the committee. The committee approved it 3-0 and said we were going to the council next. That was the last I was told of the actions being done.
So this is not what the committee approved, the requested and appropriated COMOT C to COMOT C? This was not what the committee, the personnel committee approved?
No, the personnel committee approved what I presented to them.
The $4,000.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it was so much approval as it was an agreement. We agreed on what I presented to them, and it was going to the council with their recommendation.
So the Personnel Committee approved the creation of a new lane.
Of a what?
Of a new lane. The Personnel Committee, am I hearing this correctly?
No.
No.
Mr. Jenkins was going to take out of his own fund the $4,000 to pay the person the extra money he was wanting to give them. Correct?
No.
We had funds.
Out of
We
his
had
care
funds
of
available.
inmates fund?
This
No,
is
it's
out of
not
general fund.
We have funds allotted to us to pay for this. Next year's funds, we never get asked how much to put in there. We're just given an amount. And so we use it up. And then last year, we had to come back to you and ask for more money because nobody asked me how much we needed. And so we spent it on salaries, as we should. But no one asked me, how much money you'd think you should have in salary next year, Director Jenkins? I was given a line item, a number in the line item for salary, as it's been done for at least 3 years. I have not met with anybody and told you how much money we need in that salary line. So there's never the correct amount put in there. In this instance, we have enough money to complete this year and to start next year as we always do. And then if we run out, we'll have to come back and ask you for more.
COMOT A is the entry level position. COMOT A is entry level.
In the comic classification,
Yes. COMOT D is it at the highest level?
Yes.
Okay, and then you would go to another classification. If we weren't doing COMOT D, you would go to something else. Is that correct? In terms of responsibilities,
Well, if your responsibilities and everything were outside of a COMOT D, then they would look to see what other classification they fit into. Whether it was PAT, whether it was exact, whatever it would be. If they deemed that there was enough and they created a COMOT E.
If D is inappropriate, improper, and this person, whoever it is unable to fulfill these duties, or if it's completely outside the scope of this, then I will return and we'll redo this. But I can't imagine if you're going up one level. Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, we've got a motion on the floor.
Okay.
So we've got this. It's been seconded. So
The motion is to amend.
from a C to a D in terms of the salary ordinance. So it's going to come back before us at some point,
Yeah,
correct?
If funding isn't there for it.
Funding in there.
In 2020.
In 2020.
Okay, but we ought to be able to know the differences in the classifications. There ought to be a quick way to identify how somebody goes from one to another. We get classification requests all the time, and some of them are approved and some of them are denied. So a D would reflect what?
A different skill set, a different responsibility level than what is outlined in A, B, or C.
And where is that defined?
Okay. We have a good philosophical, there are going to be some decisions that have to be made. We're establishing that, I think, this evening. Anybody else have a comment or a question on what's before us?
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
If we were to go by the personnel meeting, Mr. Jenkins asked for $4,000, which would then, I mean, I understand we're going from a COMOT C to a D, but wouldn't that be taking it from an E, or from a C to probably an E or a Pat A?
No, A is less.
Okay.
And
I'm
E-
just
and E doesn't
saying from the
exist.
personnel standpoint.
Yeah.
Personnel it's on our sheet as it was 3-0 favorable to move the recommendation forward. So it's, as it's stated here, it was keeping it as a C and adding a blank of 4,000, whatever a flat dollar amount. What's before us is to change it from a C to a D. Not the
I understand.
requested amount. Anyone else? Roll call vote?
Ms. Burnett?
I want to make a motion. I don't have enough information about change of responsibilities and how that's different and type of responsibility this person has. And we've seen salary information from other counties that suggest that the current salary is about in the middle range of other plans on which what I know less than I want to know right now, basically suggests that the market or other forces have defined a range this person is already for this type of responsibility. Given that, all of that is all I know, and I wish I knew more.
Mr. Schweitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye. Let the record show we have changed the classification for this position from COMOT C to COMOT D. Ms. Swager, does that take care of personnel?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, you just amended.
You amended it.
Oh, wait a
now
minute.
you got to vote as
That's
amended.
why you're here, isn't it? Okay, so the salary ordinance 2019-12 has been amended. I'll take a motion to pass it now as amended.
So moved.
Second.
The motion we have a motion to approve the amended salary ordinance 2019-12, request of council 19-065, juvenile corrections from a C to a D by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Wager. Discussion. Roll call vote.
Ms. Burnett? Mr. Schweitzer?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye. Passes 5-1. Now, Councilmember Wager, are we finished with personnel?
I believe that concludes.
Other ordinances and resolutions, none. Honorary resolutions, none. Resolutions relating to the fiscal policies of the council, none. First reading by summary reference of proposed ordinances and resolutions. I was not given a logbook. Does that mean none? None? None.
We're done for the year.
That's what we're appointments. There aren't any, and I will welcome and adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Morris, seconded by Councilmember Schweitzer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Good job, Jim. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Really?
Yes.
I concur.
Hungry.
I do.